It should be accessible when people need to know. But I don't think you have much hope of reaching a public that doesn't have a professional need to know.
I completely agree with that. I almost think you'd scare the public if you put this out. Like, why are they telling me this? Should I be concerned about my bank? Like, my insurance company doesn't tell me what they're doing with my assets. They just assume they're going to pay my claim, right? I think you've got to think of the unintended consequences of taking a public that has more full faith and confidence in the banking system than maybe people in this room do. That we want them to have full faith and confidence in the banking system. They know the FDIC insurance is there. They know it works. They put their money in. They're going to get their money out. So there's a select crowd of people that are in the institutional side. And if they want to understand this, they're going to find a way to understand this. There's a bunch of law firms represented in this room. There's a bunch of people that charge them by the hour a lot of money to explain this all to them. And it's fine. I don't have a problem with that. And they all have huge staffs. But I would be careful about the unintended consequences of starting to blast too much of this out in the general public.
I'd like to go back to some of Dick's early comments. I do think it is hard to get a lot of demand for transparency right now in this sort of period of peacetime, but that is going to flip, and it's going to flip probably even faster than we saw in 2008, where the need for communications really quickly in the social media world to avoid disinformation, to have some holding patterns for things like, I remember in the early days of bail-in, people saying they're coming for my deposits, right? So just holding communications that you can pull out that are helpful to deal with disinformation, some very simple things, and how quickly you'll be able to deal with different constituencies. For example, as liabilities are further up and closer to harm's way, when are you going to be able to give them some comfort, if any? How do you deal with foreign operations? How do you communicate to some of those different groups? I think ex-ante preparation for the speed of scaling up and the ability to get information out to avoid rumors taking over the narrative strikes me as probably the place that feels like it's got the most benefit in a world where I think you've done a pretty good job of getting out the basics of Title II and some of the basic resources that are available now.
I wondered whether there are some market tests of whether you're being heard. And I think about TLAC. So TLAC should respond to good and bad news about the institutions. And it's really important. I mean, it's a little bit conflicted, right? I mean, it's important that people understand they can be bailed in, but you don't want a huge run on the institution. But they're going to be. And it could be an early warning signal to the FDIC and the primary regulators when these things happen. And there may be some other prices, this is similar to what Jay was saying, in the market that you can tell whether people understand who's going to be protected, who isn't going to be protected. It would be, I think, an interesting study to look at the evolution of market prices in a situation like March of 2020, for example, and see whether people understood what might happen. Right.